My husband was in a motorcycle accident when our son was only a year old. He didn't make it. We lost his house shortly after, so Teddy and I moved in with my in-laws. Though 5 months later, we had our own space again. It was weird and difficult in the beginning. I had never lived on my own before, let alone do it while having another mouth to feed. But Teddy's grandparents were my support system the entire way. They happily watched my son all day while I worked, sometimes 2 jobs. Now I know children grow up fast. I remember watching my nieces and nephews mature through the years. But when Teddy started daycare, it seemed like he was coming home a new person every day. Like one day he was using his favorite orange blanket. Then the next day, that was in the trash and his new favorite color was green. I couldn't keep up. So by the time my son started telling me about his imaginary friends, I didn't pay it much mind. I figured it was a quick phase that would be over soon. And I was right, but it didn't come without his own set of challenges for the both of us. My son liked to draw, and whenever I caught his scribbles on the walls or the furniture, he came up with another name to blame it on. But by his 7th birthday, I began telling Teddy that no matter which of his friends were guilty, he'd be in trouble for it. And magically, I didn't see any more wall doodles. Instead, I noticed a change in my son's behavior that was rather gratifying. He started getting especially interested in science, just like his father used to be. But rather than a chemistry set, Teddy wanted a telescope so that he could start studying the stars. When I asked what brought about his newfound curiosity, my son credited his new imaginary friend, Drift. Teddy said Drift wasn't like the others. When I asked him to elaborate, he just said that Drift was older and knew a lot of stuff. And at that moment, I decided to do something I had been thinking about for weeks. I had a vacation coming at one of my jobs, and I decided to call out from the other. Teddy and I hadn't spent 3 consecutive days together in years, and I wanted to change that and be the ever-present mother he deserved, even if only for a week. I told him I was taking him for a train ride that Monday. He was so excited. We were also going to visit a science museum, but that part was staying a surprise. After dinner Sunday, we played cards for a couple of hours. Then it was time for my son to get ready for our outing the following day. I escorted him upstairs and helped him load the tub with his toys for bath time. Then I listened to him play while I talked on the phone. Before long, my doorbell rang, and I told Teddy I'd be back as I went downstairs to check who it was. It was Kevin, one of my neighbors. He was looking for car jumper cables. I didn't have any, but that didn't stop a conversation from forming. After going back in, I made my way back up the steps, and to my confusion, the TV in Teddy's room was already on. He would stay in the tub for hours if you let him, but for some strange reason, my son was already in bed. I asked Teddy if he was feeling okay. He said he was fine, but Drift had already tucked him in. I didn't know how to respond, but it was that exact issue that I hoped to soon gain more insight on. I kissed my son goodnight, then headed toward the hallway. I cut his light out and closed his door. All I had left to do was clean up Teddy's mess, and then I could go back to my phone conversation. But when I walked in my bathroom, I thought I was going crazy. My son had placed all of his toys back in the bin, and not only had the tub been drained, I could hardly find a drop of water inside it. It was as if Teddy had already cleaned it out, and I couldn't tell if I was more relieved or concerned. I refilled the tub for my own bath. Then I headed back out the room to grab my robe. But as I looked down the hallway, I got an uneasy feeling all over. I noticed Teddy's wet footprints on the carpet leading from the bathroom over to his door. But I wasn't sure why there seemed to be another set trailing toward my bedroom. I burst in my son's room and cut the light back on. I didn't mean to scare him, but I was becoming a wreck myself. I asked him if there was anyone else in the bathroom with him while I was downstairs. Drift. I grabbed my son and my phone and dialed 911 as we walked across to Kevin's house. I told the dispatcher I thought someone was in my home. They said they'd send units right away, but my neighbor insisted he would take care of it. He and his cousin went back inside my house as Teddy and I waited for the police on Kevin's porch. The two were back outside before the cops arrived, and they said they looked all over the house but didn't find anyone. I was afraid of sounding foolish, so I didn't mention anything about drift. I simply said I heard noises and I thought some things had been moved out of place. The police took down their report and left. Kevin spent the night on my sofa. A few weeks later, Teddy joined his school science club, and I started hearing less and less about his imaginary playmates. Still, from time to time, I would hear my son talking out loud, but no one else would be around. And I started noticing he was carrying a new book around with him everywhere he went. When I asked about it, I was told it's for his sketches. I asked if I could see them, but got denied. Though, one day while Teddy was distracted with video games, I took a peek anyway. There were a lot of drawings of me, several of his grandparents as well, and there was also a man in many of the pictures. My first assumption was that it was drift, but as I kept turning the pages, I noticed the man was always wearing all red in each of the sketches. I don't know if all of this sounds nuts, but my ex-husband's motorcycle suit was all red. Something is definitely going on, and I'm going to find out what.